To prison for life with no hope of parole. She didn't murder anyone. She didn't commit a violent crime. Jadonna Young was given a life sentence because police found her boyfriend's drugs in her car. She was sentenced under a Michigan law that was supposed to get drug kingpins off the streets with a mandatory life sentence. But it was never intended to lock up permanently first offenders like Jadonna Young. She was one of the first people convicted under that law, and 2 decades later, her story finally helped persuade state officials to rewrite it. Now, Michigan's change of heart has changed Jadonna Young's life.
I just said, thank you, God. I am a blessed woman to be able to be here today.
You spent 20 plus years in prison.
Yeah.
And you consider yourself a blessed woman?
I consider myself a blessed woman, yes.
Jadonna Young was blessed with freedom as she rode into the neat Detroit neighborhood she hadn't seen since 1978. Less than an hour after being released from prison, she got a warm homecoming. A hug from her mother, Irene, tears from family and friends, and smiles for the camera, which captured Jadonna's first taste of freedom in more than 2 decades. There was a lot to digest. Not so much the ice cream. They had that in prison. But the fact that she was able to eat it with a real spoon. Now she could do something that was impossible behind bars.
Oh. Look at that.
Reach out and touch someone. Even her first call to her parole officer.
Hello, Mrs. Jenkins. My name is Jadonna Young. I was told I was released today, and I was told to call you.
Meant a new experience with voicemail. The last time Jadonna had been home, she was 24, the single mother of a little boy named Delanio, a graduate of junior college. She'd never been arrested, let alone convicted, of any crime. But Jadonna had fallen in with a bad crowd. She'd been dating 52-year-old James Gully, a free-spending businessman who owned a car wash and gave her gifts, like a new Cadillac.
Were you greedy at those days?
Probably, yes.
Wanted material things?
Materialistic, very much so. And there was one officer, he came to me, he says, whose drugs are these? And I'm like, what? He says, whose drugs are these? And they put me in one car and they put him in another car. We sat there and they drove off. And the nightmare began.
How did you get into this situation?
How I ended up there was my choice of companion.
But you didn't know he was in the drug trade?
No. There was no... I still say this today. There was no reason for him to have been. I know he had a couple of businesses that were very profitable, or I thought were profitable.
And Jadonna learned one more tough lesson that night about something called the 650 LIFER law. It was a one-strike-and-you're-out law aimed at drug kingpins. Anyone convicted of possessing more than 650 grams, or 1.5 pounds, of narcotics must be sentenced to life in prison without parole.
When they stopped us, the same officer that asked me whose drugs were those, he told me, he says, do you know that they just passed a law that you can get life for this?
Is that the first you'd heard of the 650 LIFER law?
The first I've heard of it. It still didn't register then.
Even though Jadonna had no criminal record and swore she knew nothing about the drugs in her car, she and Gully became the first people sentenced under the new law, but not the last. The law sent more than 200 people to prison for life with no hope of parole. It was the toughest drug law in the country, tougher, much tougher than federal drug laws. But did it work? This Michigan law was supposed to catch the big fish of the drug trade, but it seems to have netted mostly small fry. About 85% of those convicted had no prior prison records. 7 of those sent to prison for the rest of their lives were teenagers.
I'm not arguing that anyone was an angel. I'm arguing that the punishment doesn't fit the crime or the individual. It's a one-size-fits-all penalty.
Laura Sager leads a Michigan group called Families Against Mandatory Minimum Sentences. She says the 650 LIFER law has put away people with little or no role in the drug trade. People like David Lester, whose girlfriend accused him of being her drug supplier, a charge he denies. Or Mindy Brass, a California businesswoman convicted of helping an acquaintance buy cocaine. Or David Ryan, an addict convicted of selling cocaine to an undercover cop.
The laws sweep up low-level mules, addicts, first-time offenders, and give them the same long sentences as someone who may have a much larger role in the drug trade.
Let me challenge you. This law was designed, its principal motivation in passing it was to get at the drug kingpins. Anybody who carries drugs over a certain amount, we're going to really clamp down on them. Now, what's wrong with that?
Well, interestingly enough, the higher you are in the drug trade, the more likely you're going to be able to give information to prosecutors for lighter sentences. The more likely you're able to employ very good defense counsel.
For instance, Timothy Allen Dick was arrested the same month as Jadonna with more than 650 grams of cocaine, but he cooperated with federal prosecutors, testified against others, and served 2 years. As Tim Allen, he went on to a successful career in movies and television.
Oh, I hate when you do that.
But Jadonna was not able to make that kind of deal.
When I first came to prison, the women didn't believe I was just there for drugs. They said I was lying. It had to be more involved in my case. It had to have been a murder. It had to just been more than I was telling.
Because you were in for life.
Because I was in for life, yeah, and I was.
So they
lying.
thought you were lying about it being a drug case.
They thought I was lying about my case, yeah.
Did you or did you not say to yourself, well, this is it for me for the rest of my life?
Absolutely not. No.
You didn't say, this is my home, this is going to be it?
Oh, no. Oh, no. That was never my home.
On your bunks, ladies, on your bunks.
They have rooms, and I always called it a cell because my room is at home at my mom's. Why should I accept that?
Instead of accepting prison, Jadonna worked. She became a paralegal and earned a bachelor's degree. While she struggled, her son, Delonio, was growing up without her.
What did you tell him when you went away to prison?
I didn't tell him anything. I don't think my mother told him anything. He just assumed I was away at school. And then later, like they say, children have big ears and big eyes. He would listen, and he learned.
Her little boy, Delonio, is now a parent himself, the father of a 6-year-old girl. He can't forget visiting day in prison.
Visiting her was lovely, but when that door closed and she was still in there and we were outside, me and my grandmother, it's just something unbearable.
Did you or did you not feel that you let your mother down, you let your son down?
I was talking to my mom on the phone one day, and I think it was after they had denied an appeal. And she told me, she says, Jay, I'm so sorry. And I said to myself, no. You shouldn't be sorry. I'm the one that should be sorry.
Jadonna tried to get her conviction overturned. A somewhat sympathetic federal appeals court said that giving her a life sentence was like springing a tiger trap on a sick kitten. But in the end, they turned down her appeal, ruling finally that heroin dealing in anti-quantity is a very serious offense.
The potential for this drug to get into hands and spread throughout the streets and cause death in our community is huge. And if people are moving this amount of drugs, they're not a casual person.
Michael Bouchard just became sheriff in Michigan's Oakland County after serving 8 years as a state senator. He insists the law that sent Jadonna to prison for life has worked because of the message it sends to drug dealers.
If you do it, you run the risk of going to jail the rest of your life.
Those who have the opposite view say, well, the proof is in the prisons, that the big guys in the drug trade squeal on the little guys, and the little guys who go to prison.
Well, I think there's lots of little guys in prison because they get caught with the drugs. But they also know, and they have to know, that that's part of the price of the business they chose.
What about first-time offenders? And some first-time offenders are sent up for life without parole.
Again, first-time offenders doesn't necessarily mean first-time, in my opinion, traffickers. Lots of people are out there, and lots of people get away with it, unfortunately, every day for many, many days. It's not necessarily the first time they actually did it. It's the first time they got caught and convicted.
Everyone rise?
Chief Circuit Court Judge Michael Sapala has a different view.
We come from a system, don't we, where we are not supposed to punish people on the basis of suspicion, on the basis of the belief that they may have committed other offenses. My goodness, talk about a slippery slope. you are punished. You are sentenced based upon proven conduct.
He believes the 650 LIFER law is a failure.
You do or do not think the record shows it's been even reasonably effective in putting big drug kingpins in prison?
There is no evidence of that. I would challenge any supporter of the 650 LIFER law to show me someone in prison in Michigan convicted under that statute who we could fairly call a kingpin.
Most big drug cases, Judge Sapala says, get transferred now to federal court, leaving defendants like Jadonna Young facing the LIFER law in Michigan state court.
Have you sentenced anyone on the basis of the 650 LIFER
Yes.
law?
Yes.
So you said to him directly, you were sentenced to life in prison with no hope of parole.
That's correct. The same sentence that we impose, of course, for first-degree murderers.
That's one reason why state legislators began to wonder if the law should be changed. Last summer, they voted to allow parole after 15 years in prison. And in January, Jadonna Young went before the state parole board and became the first 650 LIFER to win early release.
It's kind of hard right now to express really what I feel because it's only been a few minutes and I'm still like dazed, but it's going to get better and this is the happiest day of my life.
Where does life go for you now?
Oh, life goes for me slowly, but very positively in good directions, I hope.
You have a job?
Not yet. I've applied to school. I'm waiting on that. Hopefully, I'll be able to find financial assistance. And I don't have a problem because if I have to work at McDonald's in the day, Burger King at night, and Wendy's on the weekends, I'm fine with that.
If I come back and see you 1 year, 5 years, 10 years from now, any chance that you'll serve more time?
Absolutely not.
For some other crime?
No. Absolutely not. I don't even want to pass the prison on the freeway.
Jadonna will be facing a new challenge in September when she'll begin studying for her master's degree in social work at the University of Michigan.
Let her go. That's a good-looking girl you got there. Them Spanish broads. Ooh, that's a scary look. Yikes. You see the look you gave me? Natural Rivera. What a name. Yeah, you see the rack on that girl?
You know what? Take another angle, man. You can't fucking touch her.
No. You missing the point. She touched you.
You're lying.
Am I?
Yeah.
Oh, that's sweet. You really trust her. All I know is she's walking away. Yeah, we just signed her release.
Probably having a big party tonight over at Jimmy's Bronx Cafe.
Sure, why not? Big celebration. She got that whole fancy apartment to herself now. What? You thought she was with you for your looks? Shit. Girl saw a pot of honey and she licked it clean.
Yeah, she's a real smart girl. Now you, on the other hand...
You're supposed to be smart. Got yourself a scholarship to a fancy private school, Not bad for a punk from Bay Ridge.
Yeah, but then you go and get yourself thrown out for dealing weed to some rich kids. What up with that?
You know what happens to pretty boys like you in prison?
Having a big party tonight over at Jimmy's Bronx Cafe.
Sure, why not? Big celebration. She got that whole fancy apartment to herself now. What? You thought she was with you for your looks? Shit. Girl saw a pot of honey and she licked it clean.
Yeah, she's a real smart girl. Now you, on the other hand...
You're supposed to be smart. Got yourself a scholarship to a fancy private school, Not mad for a punk from Bay Ridge.
Yeah, but then you go and get yourself thrown out for dealing weed to some rich kids. What up with that?
You know what happens to pretty boys like you in prison?
They gonna love you.
Yeah, maybe. But then again, maybe not. Geez, Your Honor, you know, what can I say? I messed up. You know, my mother died. I was so worried about my father. I needed to help him out. My head was a little turned around. I got hooked in with the wrong people, and I made a big mistake. I really did, but it was my first time. I'm sorry, and it will never, ever happen again. Time served. Probation.
You don't read the papers much, do you, smart guy? In New York, we've got a wonderful thing called the Rockefeller laws. Let me educate you. You had a kilo in your sofa. That kind of weight makes it an A1 felony. 15 years to life minimum for first offense. Now, with that much spread in the sentencing guidelines, the judges take their cues from the prosecutors. So if it's the prosecutor's wife busted his chops that morning, you're fucked. You're gone for good. If you get lucky, really lucky, and let's say he got some good trim the night before, maybe he'll plead you off to an A2. But that's still 3 to 8 for first time, minimum. How much of that stretch you pull is all up to the mood of the prosecutor. And he's gonna ask us, did he play ball?
Separates me from the rest of these so-called MCs. They rhyme so flow like smooth bees. I fortify a rhyme with vitamins and minerals. Flow for the common folk, flow for the criminals. For the fans, womans, and in between. On my D, much like a hip-hop fiend. Call me the Glimmer Man. I rock mink, Gucci, Chinchilla, Timberland. Y'all been looking for me? Well, here I am, the ego killer. I make a millionaire, feel like he ain't got no credit. Picture me falling off, please nigga forget it. Don't call a hater. Call them lotion. They always waiting to get put on with no devotion. Real niggas do real things. And fly bitches fall for smooth be like puppets with gut strings. Paid in full like AZ Alpo and Rich Porter. Next quarter, watch some careers get shorter. Game over.
Who's that? My style is the best. I got a funky rhyme, or with a funky style. That's the price you gotta pay. Game over. Who's that? My style is the best.
I told you before, we come back with more hits. I don't just spit on the mic. I throw up when I'm finished. I blow up when it comes to writing poetry. I show off like Bismarck. I go off. Most competitive, most compatible, equilateral. The way I break it down over beats is mathematical. Real players eat lobster and shrimp. When I pop my collar, I look like a pimp. In Harlem like Dan, I'm dapper. The rapper's rapper. I go to hot pot for rice and beans and red snapper. When I'm fed up, foes fear me, I get fiery. Not a bad boy, but I bust off like Mike Lowry. Drop 7 hits for 7 summers before Diddy. Ask Diddy who the real prince of the city. An emperor like Hirohito. You small like a mosquito. I'm fearless to full like Tito. Italians say magnifico. Bad bitches say, are you from DR or Puerto Rico? From the Bronx, I was raised around that raw Perico. The man standing next to the man like I was Chico. Give me baked chicken, plot the nose with some sofrito.